Sebastian first. How are you today and where are you calling us from?
Hi, I'm doing well, and hi everyone. I'm calling from my kitchen in Berlin, in Germany.
Okay, and you, Ryan, I think you deserve a special round of applause because I believe that it is 6:15 a.m. for you right now. Ryan, where and how are you?
Hi, Dorothy. I'm doing great. I'm in my kitchen in Los Angeles, California. And yeah, I've been up since 2:30 a.m. following Ecsite. And I have to say, this isn't the first time that I've been up all night for an Ecsite conference.
Okay, lovely. So thanks a lot to you both. The floor is yours now for some tinkering. See you later, guys.
Cool. So Sebastian, I was doing some calculations and I realized that this is actually the 8th Ecsite makerspace.
Wow, 8 times.
But a little bit different this time.
Unfortunately, yeah, I'm missing not seeing everyone in person, but I'm very happy to see everyone here online today.
Yeah, and the Maker Group has been meeting online for the past 3 months, and we've continued to think about what making and tinkering looks like in an online setting.
Yeah, actually, hanging out with everyone from the Make Ecsite group over the last couple of months was one of my favorite things, and we were engaging together over the long distance in tinkering at home.
Yes, so one of the things that we worked on was planning this session. So we thought that for the online Ecsite, we would practice doing some tinkering, hands-on tinkering together. So this session is going to be interactive. If you have a family member, some kids or a spouse with you or roommates, they can join in the session as well. And we're going to be joining, I think, 6 or 7 different tinkerers from our Ecsite Makers group in their kitchen tables over the next 45 minutes. It's going to be a bit of a playful and experimental session. It's a little bit weird for us to be, not around the table with you. So I wanted to bring on Reed, and Reed is going to be actually monitoring the chat. And the chat on the side of the screen here is the way that everyone can interact with us, ask questions, share what they're doing. So here's Reed. Reed, can you just introduce yourself and say what you'll be doing today?
Sure. My name is Reed. Hi, everybody. I'm coming to you from the Oli Oli Children's Museum in Dubai, and I will be monitoring the chat for this presentation. We really hope for it to be as much of a conversation as possible, so we'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat with your name, where you're from, and most importantly, any comments or questions you may have, and I will relay those to the presenters. Thanks so much.
Cool. So I think Reed will minimize your camera, but you can still jump in, Reed. If people have questions, you can say them out loud. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sebastian. So Sebastian, let us know, what are we going to be doing today?
Okay, so today we'll be tinkering with light and shadow, and we came to your kitchen table, to your home, to do this together with you. Now, how could you get started? Here's some examples. How can you get started tinkering, playing with light and shadow? One really easy example is just take a flashlight and then take a small object and hold it close to the flashlight, and you can create a beautiful big shadow. Like you see in this image, beautiful grid pattern created with a small plastic basket. You could play with light and shadow in a different way. And tinkering is all about doing it your way and different ways. And the different way would be you can combine drawing with making shadows. So the eye that you see there is a combination of an interesting drawing with the shadow and a light effect caused by this jar. Another way a simple way to engage with light and shadow at home is to create a shadow skyline. So why don't you find some food containers or cosmetics containers, skewer sticks, and you put those on a table and shine a light on it to create a shadow skyline. Now, you say, how can I start with this? Well, that's simple. You just take the materials that are in front of you on your table. Oh, wait. You don't have any materials? Because, yeah, Ryan's laughing. Because maybe you're watching the Ecsite live stream all day, you didn't collect materials. That's fine. You can still do it. All you need is a light and then some household objects, which you have behind you in the cupboard in your kitchen, and then a surface to cast shadows on. You also need a phone to take pictures. And when you set this up and you want the perfect picture, sometimes it's good to have someone to help you to have everything in the right place. So get your friends and do this together, because tinkering is always a social experience. And that brings me to the last part, sharing what you are making. So we love to sit around the table and get inspired by what everyone makes. But now that we're working with such a large group of people and far apart, we decided to create a virtual kitchen table. And you can see that on this slide. It's empty now, almost. There are 2 posts on our kitchen table, this website. A friend of mine made a nice post. It's called The Castle of Citrus Press. So she used a citrus press she found and created an interesting shadow of a castle, and then added some toys to complete the picture. And so she posted that, and we want you all to post your creations on our virtual kitchen table. Put a little description in your post and say your name and send it out. How do you find the kitchen table? We have a call to action that is like right under the screen, and that will get you to the kitchen table. So we're almost ready to get going. I wanted to give a special shout out to school teachers who are here in this call today, because we had a lot of school teachers actually engage with us and do this tinkering at home activities. And I'm really excited that they are here. And I wanted to give a shout out to the Fab Lab in Barcelona, who created this activity together with us. And wanted to say thanks to the Ecsite team for making this conference accessible to everyone by making it for free. So thank you, Ecsite. Now, I will see you later in a Zoom call about learning together online. And I will hand it over to Ryan, and I want you to promise me to just continue and start tinkering with your materials on the table and have your screen on the side and listen to Ryan's soothing voice in the background. But please keep going, start tinkering. And Ryan, you have your materials?
Yes, I do. And I'm going to show my materials. So thanks, Sebastian, for getting us started. And so as we all get started building and working with shadows, I'm going to show my setup here and also bring on Bea and Inka, and they're going to show how they're tinkering at home. So for me, I'm using an old, wow, that was really bright. I'm using an old iPod that I haven't used in a while, but I'm using the flashlight there. And instead of a screen, I'm actually using the side of my refrigerator. I have some objects. I have a Nalgene bottle that makes some really beautiful colored shadows. I have this strainer basket here that makes a beautiful geometric grid on the side of my refrigerator. And then this really interesting device. It's kind of like Shivani's guess what this is, but this is something from my kitchen that's actually from holding paper towels, and this makes some great shadow. So why don't in the chat, as we introduce ourselves to Bea and Inka, why don't in the chat you can say what kitchen materials are you using to make shadows? And so hi Bea, hi Inka. Great to see you. So Bea, can you start off by introducing yourself and tell us about your at-home tinkering station?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Ryan. Hi, everyone. I am Bea from Art and Course. I'm an art educator and teach in Barcelona, but now I'm in my kitchen with my family. And I can show you some of the things that we are doing in the last days. And I need to say that it was a really nice opportunity for us to engage in something together, being too much at home now. Light and shadow and transforming our kitchen was an engaging activity for all. Pedro.
And it's so and it's so cool that you're working with your family here too. Yeah.
Yeah, sincerely, I put today all the things together, the things that we've been doing from several days. And I also have here Andres. Andres, hi.
Hi.
Going around the kitchen with a light flash. It was the perfect excuse for us. We are discovering objects and possibilities in shadows.
Wow, that's so beautiful how they're in the cabinet and each object really looks like a precious, beautiful material. You really can think about these common objects like leeks in a totally different way. That's so beautiful. So keep on tinkering, Bea, and let's check out Inka's setup and see how she's tinkering with light and shadow. Hey, Inka, can you introduce yourself and tell us about your at-home tinkering station?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I'm Inka from Nemo Science Museum in Amsterdam. And I'm not in the kitchen, I'm in the attic because I have a wide, big wall here. But I took some things from my kitchen and I wanted to show you some of the shadows I am making with it here. This is just a bottle with water. This one I like a lot. Sebastian mentioned the citrus press, but oh, it's really, really nice. And my son just discovered that this is different than this. There's a little bit difference in the balls. I think this one I discovered just today. I found a very nice feather. And I think the most exciting and the most unusual shape maybe is just, it is a funnel, but I really like the way the light plays and the effect of it.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And I want to see what Bea is doing. But before that, Inka, can you tell us if you have any tips or tricks for taking photos of your shadow?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Because I discovered the light of my cell phone is really a good light because you have a really, as you see with me now, really sharp edges, and I like the sharp edges. But when you put on the light of your cell phone, I can't make a photo anymore because then the light will go off. So I made a setup where I put an old cell phone where the light is still working and with lots of tape around on a table. I will show you. Look, like like this. So it's a a chair with my cell phone and a lots of tape on it. And then
that's beautiful.
And then my hands are free to make the picture.
Yeah, I feel like what's so cool about some of these at-home tinkering activities is that you have to also build your own tools. So you're using tape and chairs and, looking at shadow objects in a different way, but also building and constructing things to make it easier for you to do that. Let's check in one more time. Bea, can you just show us very quickly what you're doing on the stove there?
Oh, yes, I have here Maria, and we have a perfect station here to be drawing without having to hide the objects or the light. You have free hands, and it's something that just the kitchen give us. It was like a present.
Yeah, I mean, that's so cool. And we'll talk a little bit more in a bit about drawing and remixing on the shadows, but I think that's really beautiful as well. You're using artistic materials to add to that. Do you have one more thing to show us? We have about 1 more minute, and then we're going to check out what all the Ecsite participants have been making.
Okay, this is another trick that maybe can help someone. Because I decided to move this to my online lessons, I use this tripod to be super easy it was super easy for me to share what I'm doing here and also my face. Just moving this with these elements, and also having different places to put the light to find different shadows.
It's so beautiful, because I think that a lot of us, and Sebastian will talk a bit more about this in the meetup after this call, but figuring out how we can create connections with people online, both talking and sharing ourselves, but also showing our workspace so that kids and families can make along with us. So I'm going to say now thank you to Bea, and maybe Inka, you can come on again and say bye from your attic, and thanks to your kids, Bea. Yeah, adios. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye. And so we'll hopefully keep seeing on the kitchen table from Bea and Inka. And in the meantime, I'm gonna show on my screen and check in what is going on. If I can do that. Check in and see what's going on in our online kitchen table tinkering. And while I do that, Reed, is there any questions in the chat that we'd like to address at the moment?
Yeah, we have some nice comments and I think some good ideas. Karen asked a question about how to make a specific place that I'm sure she's been, and that might be a really interesting challenge for people, is try to think of, instead of making an object, try to create a place that you know, like a skyline or an area in your neighborhood. Another interesting comment was from Andreas about using a 3D printer to create stair graphic projections out of shadows, which shows that this activity can be so simple with just things you have on hand in your kitchen, as well as be brought into much more higher and more technical levels.
Great. Thanks, Reed. And on the screen right now, I just wanted to show some of the things that you're posting. And so if you've been posting photos on our online kitchen table, thanks so much. Just a couple I'd like to highlight. Here's one that someone made using what looks like blue glass, the swirl patterns and the crystal. Really beautiful how all those shadows kind of interact. Also, someone here is, looking at a small snake shape that's inside of their vase. So that's really cool. And something that I'd like to point out is this idea that you can start imagining what these shadows remind you of. So there's a couple ways to do this. Some people have tried it, like Reed here. And I love how Reed shows his setup as well. He's using a potato masher and then putting just a piece of paper behind the potato masher and drawing a small cartoon face on the piece of paper. Other people are using digital tools to draw. Like this person, let's see if we see who this is. Marika, who will join us in a second, turned this interesting shadow into a penguin or some sort of bird. So I'm just going to show real quick how to do that. If I can go to my presentation real quick. Sorry, one moment. And in your, great. So one of the things that we're doing with these photos is actually using our phones or tablets to draw and remix these shadows. So here's how I do it on the iPhone. I take a picture of a shadow. I click on the little edit button up on the top, and then that opens up a program called Markup. And in Markup, you can have all kinds of different colors and pens, different ways that you can draw and remix your shadow photo. So using my phone, I turned this kind of abstract geometric pattern into a fire-breathing dragon. I think, Reed, maybe in the chat bar, you can also put a link to how people can do this on their Android phones. And so as we bring on our next tinkering guests, if you want, you can also start to draw and remix your shadows. So I'm gonna ask Samar and Marika to come on the screen and show us what you all are working on your in your kitchens.
Ryan,
yes.
while they're getting on the screen, someone asked a question about if we've ever used candles instead of torches for shadow play. And I think that's a really interesting idea because candles are moving all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a really great thing to experiment with this activity. The light source you use will make a big difference of what kind of shadows. There's plenty of exhibits, maybe in your science center, about how the shape of the light affects the quality of the shadow. So using a flashlight, a candle, a desk lamp, those will all make very different shadows. So if you want to experiment with that, please try it out and post your ideas on our online kitchen table. So now I'd like to say hi to Marika and Samar. And let's have Marika introduce yourself first and tell us what you're working on for at-home tinkering.
Hi Ryan. Hi everybody.
Hi.
So yeah, my name is Marika. I'm a scientific trainee in the Science Center Feno in Wolfsburg in Germany. So I'm in the curators team and I learn everything about the exhibition, and I also did quite some tinkering there already in our workshops. Yeah, and right now I'm playing also with shadows. I can show you something what I'm doing right now. This is my shadow. And I tried to do some kind of upcycling. So I took some aluminum foil and just put it somehow together and it made this shadow. And for me, this is a nice landscape with a tree, and yeah, you can just imagine something that's going on, like these sheep standing there, and yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment.
That's so beautiful. I would have never imagined that that aluminum foil would create a shadow like that. And it reminds me of some artists that put together junk materials to build interesting shadow sculptures. So we'll check back in with you in a second, Marika. And then Samar, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on at home?
Yeah, hi, I'm Samar. It's hi from Jerusalem. I live in Jerusalem, work in Ramallah at the Kavli Foundation Science Studio. And yeah, well, I have a few things on my table. We've been working, we had an exhibition on light and shadow in 2017. It was our opening exhibition. And at that time, we started with developing an exhibit on light and shadow with exploring the phenomena of glass and transparency. And with the current situation, we had lots of tinkering activities on it, and we're trying to communicate it as an exhibit with our audience through these activities. So now I'm trying to trace the shadow of different objects. Maybe if I put down the light, you can see a little bit more.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah. So it's the idea that you would explore an object made out of glass with all these different sides and edges to it. And I've done a few that maybe I can share. So you can do mandalas. It came out of this one. Different objects, they have amazing explorations that can be done through them. So this is another example. And it's depending, it's kind of putting what you are exploring as you're putting it in a memory. And it's not just about mandala. You can have a whole world of drawing that I might show you.
So,
yeah, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's so beautiful how you're using the shadow, not just in and of itself to make art, but you're also using the shadow as a tool for art and really closely observing what's going on, thinking about what that shadow could be turned into. And I think both of you are showing how this shadow and light exploration can just be the first step to a lot of other experiments around light and tinkering. And so I'm wondering, do either of you have other experiments that you've been trying to take these ideas a little bit further after you started your initial light and shadow explorations?
Well,
yeah, Samar, why don't you show us what you have what there?
Well, I've been using a little bit oil on paper, and that would kind of turn it into a translucent screen. And it's quite interesting because you don't have to hold your mobile all the time. You just put it down, put the object on top, and it's kind of a different, I don't know if it shows.
Wow, beautiful. Yes.
Yeah, and you can do different combinations with it, and you can play around with it and kind of maybe add one on top of the other. Just a minute.
No, as you're doing that, I just want to say,
yeah.
oh, no, as you're doing it, I just wanted to say, and tell us a little bit more, but it's so nice. I mean, you're at home, but creating something that is almost like the same exhibit that you would have in the Science Center, just made out of everyday materials. And that's so interesting as a way for people to connect when they can't visit the Science Center in person.
Yes, and it's also about exploring a little bit of joining maybe more than one idea of tinkering, because I've been doing some automata. I don't know if it shows. I have to just tilt a little bit.
Yes.
And it's amazing to explore these automata also with the, oops, just a minute. Yeah. So it's also amazing to explore them. It doesn't show yet. Just a minute. Yay.
It's okay. Take your time.
So they give these shadows.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Maybe this.
And can you show us? And can you show us the automata in front of the light screen, like just so we can see the mechanism? Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so nice how these connections to activities you can combine and change what you're working on. Before we check out what everyone else has been working on and sharing on our kitchen table, I'm wondering if either of you have any ideas about how you've been able to share and collaborate with families or with colleagues over the past few months.
So
yeah, Marika, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, for example, this shadow thing, it was really funny. I did it yesterday evening with my boyfriend together, and it's so nice to have this piece of aluminum foil. You can just turn it around, and it's always a new shape, and it's like a game. Everybody sees a different thing inside this shadow, and I think that's a nice activity for families also.
And it reminds me of sharing on social media as well, because Sebastian and the Tinkering Studio started a challenge where people could post a shadow picture, and then many other people remixed it. And I see some of the people even in the chat, Astrid and Paola, you know, everyone took the same shadow but saw very different, imagined very different stories with that shadow.
It's like
and maybe
watching clouds, actually.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like reminding of nature and watching clouds. Samar, can you tell us, is there anything that you've been noticing of these past few months in terms of working and collaborating online with making and tinkering?
Oh, could I actually chime in and redirect that question?
Yes, please.
There's been a couple of people very interested in wondering about the differences in how you facilitate a tinkering session online when compared to face-to-face. So maybe that's something you guys could speak to in answering that question. Thank you.
Okay. For us, it's been also communicating through different situations. For us, we have a child center in Gaza that we cannot communicate with, but through these interactive activities, it's kind of, we call them immersive activities. We kind of transferred our exhibits and the tinkering around them into the space of the learner. And we had a group of teachers in Gaza working together with their families and with the families of their students. And they actually sent us, they made a film, a quick thing of the different experiences that they've been having, and how they expanded on the different ideas with playing and shadow and kind to understand and do some art around it. It's been an amazing experience to be able to communicate around this with teachers, and them finding and grouping together. That was amazing for us.
And there's something just to add that's very interesting about once you're tinkering at home, you don't have to stop the experience just because the class ends or the science center closes. You have these materials at your home, so we're really encouraging people to continue to experiment and play and work together. So with that, I'm going to say thanks to Samar and Marika, and let's check in and see what everyone else in the Ecsite community has been posting at the table. So bye Samar, bye Marika,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, thanks everyone. Thanks. So I'm going to share, just to check in about what people have been posting on our kitchen table. And while we do that, I'm going to invite Reed and May also up on the screen, or up on the crowdcast, so that they can also share some final reflections with us. But first, let's look and see what people are sharing. So I see Maria here. Oh, that's so beautiful. Taking salt and pepper shakers and turning them into a pair of shoes. So really getting, I feel like changing the geometry and the shape can really make some new patterns. Let's see. Wow, there's so many cool ones. So this one is an airplane at sunset. So I'm really, makes me curious what's making that radiating sun pattern on the screen. We have Simona also making a really intricate shape of, well, I'm also curious what this is, but I like the subtle colors in there. And let's see if we have anyone who's drawn on their page. Oh, here's a nice, very simple but fun drawing. Somebody just turned a box into a chocolate box into a bird. And so I can imagine that just this photo can really start other people thinking about, you know, what else could that chocolate box turn into? So keep posting your photos and your ideas online. And I'm going to bring in Reed again, and also May. And May, can you also introduce yourself and tell us where you're from? Oh, May, I'm not getting your sound. Can you maybe unmute yourself? There you go. Now it's working. Perfect.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm May. I work as an educator in the Science Center Immaginario Scientifico of Trieste in Italy.
Great, thanks. And so I'm going to ask everyone at this point in the chat, we have two questions for you. We'd like to ask, what do you find surprising about tinkering at home? And what questions do you have about online learning through tinkering? So in the chat, you can write what you found surprising about this activity and what questions you have. And while you're writing that, let's hear from our guest here. So maybe we can start with Reed. So Reed, can you tell us, what have you found surprising about tinkering at home over the past few months?
One thing that I found surprising and really I've come to appreciate in a whole new way is how materials are now variables, because everyone has different things in their house. So instead of telling someone you need this thing and this thing to make that thing, it's, well, you need X and you need Y, and it can be anything you have around you. And if you combine them in this way or shine a flashlight on them correctly, then you can start this tinkering activity. So for me, that's the most amazing thing, seeing all the different materials people have made shadows with on the Padlet and in other activities. It's really inspiring.
Cool. And May, can you tell us one thing that you found surprising about tinkering at home over the past few months?
Well, I will give you one example. For example, from chain reaction, which was launched also by the Tinkering Studio via Twitter and internet. I always thought that you have to have sophisticated materials and so many tools available and a bigger space, but which was not available in our science center. But later on, with lots of challenge and encouragement from the Tinkering Studio and the amazing collaboration via internet on Twitter and Instagram, I started to change my kitchen into a maker space. And I used recycled materials, I used the pieces of furniture, I used everything around me, utensils, household items, and it was really, really amazing. And later on, I also participated in light and shadows, and they were really very satisfying experiences.
That's such a good point. This idea that you don't need sophisticated exhibits or materials. Those are nice and they can inspire some new ideas, but really at home, you can build and create your own experience, and you're really in charge of your own learning, something that is very important to us in the making and tinkering world. Reid, I know you're monitoring the chat. Is there any other interesting things that people have found surprising about making and tinkering at home?
Matteo is saying that because of the audience is selecting the material instead of the museum giving it to them, there's a real shift in the learning and helping people realize that their own environment is rich with possibility and science, really, as this is the first step towards science, is realizing the possibility in what you have.
Yeah, I think there's something very wonderful about this idea that you don't have to go to a specific place or be a specific person to do science or to do art. That's something that you can experiment with and practice your own ideas around being an artist or being a scientist. So May, I'm also wondering, what questions do you have about online tinkering, or what has come up in your experience as a question or a challenge that we should be thinking about as we're designing these online tinkering activities?
Well, I think that we should keep on doing these online activities, like, for example, sharing on Twitter and also Instagram, so we can collaborate, all of us from all the world, and get some exchange experiences. For me, for example, I didn't have to do anything yet online with the schools or with kids. So I think it will be something very important to know what others are doing, how do they facilitate their sessions, so that later on when we open on the 22nd of June, I will have at least some idea about it.
Great. Yeah, I think oh, sorry, Reid, and then you can ask the question. One thing that I think is really interesting is, even though we've been forced to do these online programs during COVID-19, maybe there are some advantages and we want to keep working on it so we can reach people who aren't in our community. That's a really good point. Reid, maybe one more question from the group, and then I think we're going to have to move on to our maker meetup. So
sure. This one comes from Ron, and he's asking if we can share our experiences of asynchronous tinkering activities and how did you communicate with participants. I know that Sebastian has also done a lot of this with the around the world chain reaction and light up our days hashtags, but I'm sure you guys also have plenty of experience with that as well.
Well, I think that's a really good point, and we have 3 minutes until the end of the session, but we are doing a follow-up maker meetup over Zoom after this. You'll see it in the Ecsite app. Sebastian will be leading a session to talk about these questions, but I will say that what we're doing right now is a good example of this, where we are making and building together synchronously in this meetup, but just by having a place online to share what people have been working on, I think there's also that asynchronous element, and people will be able to continue posting and sharing. Even people who haven't been a part of this session can go to our virtual kitchen table and see and get an idea and examples what other people have been working on. So with that, I think I'll say bye to Reed and May. Thank you so much for sharing some reflections.
Bye.
And
thank you.
And great. And so I just wanted to say, you can share what you've been working on. Also on Twitter, we're using the hashtags #MakeEcsite and also Tinkering at Home. And yeah, like I said, please join our Zoom call, and we'll be continuing going into the specifics of online tinkering sessions and what sort of learning they support.
Okay, thank you so much, dear Ecsite makers. That was perfect and gorgeous. I should try playing with the shadow of my apple pillar I was telling you about earlier. So coming up, we have a 30 minutes break. So make sure to be back at 4:30 for a panel session on the future of business models led by our very well-known Brad. And don't forget to use that app if you want to socialize during the break. And please don't forget to tweet us using the hashtag #ExciteOnline.